Hello everyone, welcome to this edition of the Deep Dive. Today we're exploring a very interesting topic, basically looking into the beautiful tradition of the East, the Oriental tradition of the East, and really trying to explore the wisdom tradition, the philosophical tradition of India, and some of the great perspectives that one can learn from those beautiful Dharmic tradition, and then looking at the value it can contribute towards the improvement in the way we live, in the way we relate, in the way we act within society. I think that kind of understanding is heavily absent from the Liberian psyche, from the Liberian psychology, and those traditions, I suggest, have their own value, and they can definitely help transform the way we participate in life. And for example, the Liberian psychology and the way we think, the way we act, the way we relate, basically have got incredible amount of gaps and challenges. I mean, we can see that all through different layers of our society. If you go around the country today, you see great degree of social crisis. In fact, a few minutes ago, I was just on the internet, on Facebook, and there was this big discussion around challenges young people face in society and the role of parenting, and not only young people, people as a whole have enormous degree of difficulties, social difficulties, whether it's in the area of family life, whether it's in the perspective of, depression, stress, despair that many people face in the inside, and the corresponding difficulties they continue to face on the external level in terms of the quality of relationship and friendship that is continue to face enormous pressure today. So I, 4 or 5 years ago, traveled to India, really not physically but intellectually, to explore the wisdom tradition of that part of the world. And I think a great degree of learning has happened for me, and many people, even in the West, are traveling that journey to explore and investigate the great wisdom tradition of that culture and that tradition. And one beautiful thing I think we can learn from that wisdom tradition is the emphasis, their emphasis on exploring our direct experience as individuals, self-inquiry, self-investigation, something they refer to as, Atman Vichara, the investigation of the self, the inquiry into our own experience to understand, who are we in the first place, because it's very obvious to me that if we are to experience the world, if we are to experience life, if we are to experience ourselves, the most fundamental knowledge, the primary knowledge, the rudimentary knowledge that every individual must first have is a knowledge of the self. The clear question therefore is, who am I? An investigation into the self, for me, is the highest knowledge any individual can acquire. Now, we may have, book knowledge, academic learning technical skills. Those skills have their own practical value, and no one should shy away from that, because that kind of knowledge, that kind of understanding is required to practically participate in life, to earn a living, to find a job, to improve your economic livelihood, to be able to earn income, so that you're able to handle the practical necessities of life. Those kind of knowledge, that kind of intelligence is required. We should pursue them. But I am arguing here, I'm suggesting here, which is also at the heart, of the Eastern tradition, that the foundation of any practical living has to be an understanding of the inner self, has to be an understanding of ourselves. Because once that foundation is clear, once that foundation is set, once that clarity of understanding is there, all other aspects of our outer external life tend to fall in place, tend to align with this deep recognition and understanding of ourselves, and therefore we're able to more effectively, more happily, more prosperously participate in our actual experience, and therefore life becomes more harmonious, life becomes more enjoyable, and then life becomes a celebration in that respect. Doesn't mean we will not encounter challenges and difficulties in life. Those will come, because that's the nature of the world. That's the nature of samsara, in the context of the Eastern tradition. Things will always offer challenges to all the life. Will always offer challenges, but of course those challenges will be met with a new, deeper intelligence and wisdom, upon which, something which we can shine on the difficulties that we experience in our external life. But I suggest that the foundation of all of this has to be self-knowledge, self-understanding, clear self-knowledge about who we essentially are. And I think this I want to suggest is first in a run of series that I will explore and go into in more specific detail for the practice of self-investigation, on the practice of self-inquiry. How do we discover our inner self? How do we discover our higher self? That fundamental building block upon which we can build our outer life, our outer experiences. Because if we explore our true nature, and identify the quality of that true nature, which I suggest here is peace, happiness and love, and we understand our true nature, and we know that expansive self that we actually are, which ultimately becomes the foundation upon which we can build our external life on. I suggest here that whatever we do in our external life, we'll be able to tackle conflict I will even suggest any practical level of conflict in our life, and therefore our external life and the way we live on the external level flourishes based on this deeper understanding about who we essentially are. Because if you look at basically what we know ourselves to be, what our culture have taught us, what our education system have taught, or even what our family value have taught us, I suggest here that understanding that have been inculcated into us is a wrong understanding of ourselves. And in this tradition, we understand that we are not our thoughts, we are not our religion, we're not our perspective, we're not our tribe, we're not basically what we have been taught to know ourselves to be. We are essentially that which is aware of all of those things we think we know ourselves to be. So that kind of deeper understanding of ourselves. Imagine knowing yourself not to be your thoughts, not to be what you were taught to be, your religion, your tribe, your perspective, and all of these ideologies that we get, informed that we are. Knowing ourselves not to be all of those, false knowledge of ourselves, which are described in our way. A huge burden is removed our life, and then we now have a new, fresh opportunity, to understand our essential self, to be unlimited, to be that awareness in the background of our experience, and therefore now we can now go into the world of experience with that kind of understanding, and therefore illuminate all aspects of our life, understanding that we are that which is aware of our experience. Definitely mean that our experience therefore now lose the power, the momentum, the force that it had to take us away from ourselves. Life therefore now becomes a celebration. Matters of depression, matters of stress, matters of the momentum of experience lose their capacity to drag us along, and therefore that deep level of freedom and understanding, we come from that perspective to participate in the world, and therefore that inevitably lead to the improvement in the quality of our relationship, in the quality of our friendship, in the quality of everything, even in the job place, in the way we relate to the world. Automatically we come from that deeper recognition, a deeper understanding, and then we become a light unto ourselves, and then inevitably that has repercussion, that has implication in the quality of our relationship, in the quality of the way we interact and share our experiences into the world. So again, this is just a first round of series. We'll go into more specific details in subsequent edition of our program in terms of how love, how to find lasting inner peace in our own very heart, and how we can use this understanding from the beautiful Eastern tradition, of India, of China, in that great, rich culture, and how we can inculcate some of that understanding in our own values, in our own culture in Liberia, and then help illuminate the quality of our friendship and our understanding in this country. So Again, this is the first edition. We'll go into more specific details on how, on the nature of that culture, how we can explore our own true nature, how we can discover, the happiness that we are, the absolute infinite peace and fulfillment that we are. And then, of course, not only having that discovery, but also allowing that discovery to infiltrate, the way we live, act, and relate with others around us. Thank you very much.